Hello, I'm Eiden, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to make your Rubik's Cube faster. When you're speeding up your Rubik's Cube, there are a few important rules that you need to know, which I will slowly reveal throughout the course of this video, so make sure you watch right till the end. That being said, let's get started. Now, there are three things that a lot of people put in their cubes to try and make them faster, but they actually destroy the cubes from the inside. The first of them is Vaseline. I've seen a lot of tutorials on YouTube to put Vaseline in your cube. This is okay with Rubik's brands, but the reason this makes them faster is because it literally melts the plastic on the inside of the cube. So if you have a good cube, do not put Vaseline in. Another thing that I've seen a lot of people put in their cubes is cooking oil. Now, cooking oil has some minerals in it that can grind down and wear down the surface of the pieces of the cube, so make sure you don't put cooking oil in it either. And the last thing that I've seen people put into their cubes is water. They literally open a gap in the cube and pour water on the inside. The reason you shouldn't do this is because on the inside the cube is made of metal, usually steel, and steel rusts when you put it in water, which will make your cube very slow, so do not put water in your cube. So just to recap, those three things that you should not put in your cube: Vaseline, cooking oil, and water. An effective way to speed up your cube is to do something called changing the tensions. So if you take off the center caps from your Rubik's Cube, you should be able to see a screw under each center cap. Now, if you take a screwdriver, which is usually a positive one, if you turn the screw anti-clockwise, it will loosen it, and if you turn it clockwise, it will tighten it. So the looser the cube is, the faster it will be, and the better it will be able to corner cut. Corner cutting, by the way, is when you misalign a layer and you pull. So this MoYu WeiLong GTS 3M should be able to do about 45 degrees, but it's too tight now, so it's struggling to do it. If we go from line to line, which is less than it should be able to do, it can do it, but with a lot of difficulty. So this cube needs loosening. So what I'm going to do is take off all 6 center caps and then loosen all of the screws. Once you've taken off all the center caps, you should loosen each screw by 1/4 of a turn, or 1/2 if your cube is very tight. So I'm going to loosen each of these screws by 1/2 turn. So turning it 1/2 turn anti-clockwise. Once you've done that, you can put the center caps back on. Now, a big mistake that a lot of people make when they're tensioning their cube is they loosen the screws way too much. So the second rule that I'm going to show is never loosen the screws by more than 1/2 turn at a time. If you loosen the screws too much, it can make it too easy for the pieces to corner twist or for edge pieces to come out of the cube, like this. So a way to check to see if your cube is tensioned correctly is you pull open these layers and you should just about be able to see the metal bit on the inside. So this is an example of what not to do. I've loosened the blue side far too much, and as you can see, it is very easy to spot the little metal bit on the inside of the cube. Also, this makes corner twists and pops very easy. So make sure you don't loosen your cube by too much. That's why I say don't loosen it by more than 1/2 turn, so that you know when you've got to the point where it's too loose. So now my cube is not too loose and not too tight. As you can see, you can just about see the metal bit on the inside, and it can now corner cut at about 45 degrees. For some top of the line cubes, such as the MoYu WeiLong GTS 3M, which is my main, as well as a lot of GAN cubes, there is a special system on the inside which changes something called the spring compression. So this is now at setting 8. If you look very carefully, you can see that this is as high as the little blue disc will go. If I turn it one more time anti-clockwise, it drops down to setting 1. Now the lower the number, the faster but more unstable the cube becomes. So I prefer my cubes to be on setting 8 because I find that the lower settings are too unstable for me, and they make me turn too fast and lock up a lot. But it really comes down to personal preference on how you have your cubes. If you want it to be as fast as it can be, I suggest you move it down to setting 1. For cubes which don't have the spring compression system, you can swap out the springs for different springs, say weaker springs, although this is a lot slower than changing them using this special glue disc. And the last way that I'm going to show for making your cube faster is by cleaning it out and lubing it, short for lubricating it. So the first thing you do for both cleaning out and lubricating is you need to take one piece out, so you misalign with the top layer by 45 degrees and pull from the bottom. And then once you've done this, then you disassemble your entire cube and sort out the pieces into edges and corners. So now I've disassembled my entire cube. I've arranged the pieces into corners, which have 3 colours on them, and edges, which only have 2 colours on them. What I'm left with is the core, which is the 6 centerpieces, as well as the pieces of metal that I showed before, which join them together. These centerpieces can rotate by themselves. Now for this step, you take another piece of tissue, and you'll need to clean every single piece on this piece of tissue individually. So I always start with the core. As you can see, there is a lot of dust on this core, so I'm going to take the tissue and try to wipe off as much of the dust as I can off each of the 6 centerpieces. Don't worry about this part in the middle, since no pieces actually touch this section, so it won't make a difference if you're cleaning it. So now the core looks relatively clean, so I'm going to put it back here. Next, you can take each edge and clean them all individually. So make sure that as well as just cleaning the surface of the cube, you also need to clean the tracks here, as this is where they'll rub against the tracks of other pieces. So now I'm cleaning the surface of the piece. And then I've also got to get into the tracks. So the way I do it is I fold a piece of tissue like this and put it into the tracks to try and loosen any dust that's inside there. Once you've done one edge, you can repeat with the rest of the edges. So I've just finished cleaning all of the edges, now I'm going to start on the corners. So with the corners, again, the most important sections to clean are the surfaces of pieces, which are these flat bits. On the corners sometimes you'll find ridges, but they don't really matter. And again, the tracks. It's really important that you clean the tracks, as this is where we're going to put lubricant in. And if the lubricant mixes with dust, it will start grinding down the surface and the tracks of the pieces, and that will just make everything worse. So I've just cleaned this corner, it now looks relatively clean. I'm going to continue repeating with the rest of the corners. So I've just finished cleaning all of the corners. Now every single section of the cube is cleaned, so I'm going to put the cube back together. The way I do this is piece by piece, in the order that you would if you were solving the cube using beginner's method. So for example, I'm going to take this white and orange edge, which is a cross edge, and I'll put it into the cross there. I'm now going to take this blue and white edge and put that into the cross. Once you've done your cross, then put in all the corners that have white on them. Next, you do the middle layer edges, but for this step, make sure you leave one edge empty, as this is the spot we're going to use for putting the last pieces in. Then you can build the last layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece into here, and slide them along, and keep putting the pieces in that way. So I'm going to start with the yellow and green edge, then the yellow, green and orange corner, and go all the way around until I get to the yellow and red edge. Once you've done all of them, then you can put the last corner in, like this, and then put the last edge in the same way that you took it out. So rotate the top face by 45 degrees, put the edge in, and push it in from the bottom. And the last method that I'm going to show for speeding up your cube is lubrication. There are 2 places that you can put lube into the cube. The first one is by putting it onto the surface of the pieces like this, and the second one is by putting it into the core. Now the problem is when you put it into the core, lube can leak onto the metal bits on the inside of the cube. So for this reason there are two types of lubricants, water-based and silicone-based. As the name suggests, water-based lubes are made mostly from water, so if you put them onto the tracks of your cube, they can leak onto the metal bits, make them rusty, and then your cube will become a lot slower. You can put water-based lubes onto the surface of the pieces, this makes them a lot faster. But silicone-based lubes, although being more expensive, are suitable for putting both on the surface and on the tracks of the pieces. So the last rule that I'm going to show is never use water-based lubes on the tracks of the pieces. So I use a silicone-based lube. The lube that I use is called Cosmic Luna and I bought it from cubes.co.uk, link in the description. So I'm going to start by putting lube onto the tracks of the pieces. So the way you do this is you put two pieces next to each other and see where on the tracks the pieces rub together. So I can see they rub together on the inside of the bottom section and on the inside of the top section. So what I'm going to do is put lube into both of these sections and then put the cube back together. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of lube onto the top section of the tracks and onto the bottom section of the tracks. There, that looks like enough lube. So I will put the corner back in and then I'll put the edge back in. Now to put lube on the surface of the pieces is a bit more straightforward. So you just open a gap in the cube and my lube says put 4 drops in. So I will put 4 drops onto the surface of the pieces. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then all we have to do is play with the cube for a while and let the lube break in, which means it will mix throughout the whole cube and make it a lot faster. So when I do this, you will notice that it will make the cube a lot quieter. Listen. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can definitely feel it. But the corner cutting on this cube is a lot better now. So it can now do well past 45 degrees. Can't do that, but it can do this. And reverse corner cutting, it can do about 2/3 of the way through the centerpiece. Oh, more actually, about 3/4. 3/4 of the way through the centerpiece. So lubricating this cube has speeded it up a lot more than cleaning it out. The only difference between cleaning it out and lubricating it is that for lubricating it, you need to buy lubricant. Now, Luna Lube, which I use, is quite expensive. For this 10ml bottle, I think it was £13.99, although I have had this bottle for almost a year and I'm about halfway through it. So lube does last a long time, so you shouldn't really be put off by the price of it compared to the benefit that you'll get from lubricating your cube. And if you're lubricating your cube, you'll often find that when you've broken in the lube, the surface of the cube will get a bit wet with the lubricant that's leaked out. So you can just wipe it against a piece of cloth or a t-shirt and it will be fine. So that's it for this video. If there are any more ways that you speed up your cube that you think I've missed, please leave them in the comments below and I will put my favourite ones into the video description. As always, if you like my videos, please subscribe by clicking this button down here. Thanks for watching.